the very outset, from the very beginning, from last Wednesday morning on. And I'm sure he is coming with a message of continued support and commitment, but I don't want to get into what specifically we might be asking of them.
Any
Robin?
early indications of what Taliban is saying?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
The Taliban, of course, is responding in the way that it always has, that Osama bin Laden and his associates are guests in their country. Well, it's time for the guests to leave. Rogan?
Two things. First of all, the Pakistanis are saying that there was a deadline of 3 days to hand over Osama bin Laden. Is that true?
Whose deadline?
That the deadline for the Taliban to turn over Osama bin
The
Laden.
Pakistanis gave
Yes.
them a deadline? Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Is it a Pakistani?
I don't know that I don't know if that is the case, that the Pakistanis actually said that, and whether they said it in their own name or whose name, but it wasn't in our name.
It wasn't your name. And secondly, on the front line, have you made specific and formal requests to all frontline states around Afghanistan, including Iran?
No, we have not made specific requests for assistance. Those requests are being considered now by our intelligence, law enforcement, and military communities to see what might be needed as we put our contingency plans together. Nothing has been asked of Iran in particular. Yes.
Mr. Secretary, can you say whether this government intends to contact the Taliban and to give either an ultimatum or whatever word you care to choose of the language? Can you deal with these people?
I'm sure there will be some communication in the future, but I'd not like to characterize what that communication might be yet.
Mr. Secretary, as you put the pieces of your diplomatic puzzle together, could you sort of elaborate for us on the importance that Saudi Arabia, Morocco, and other Islamic states play within the Arab world in sort of building this international consensus?
I think they are important, not only those specific countries, but all countries, Arab and otherwise, but especially Arab, to come out and condemn this kind of activity, because it's a threat to their own countries. There isn't one of them you mentioned that hasn't faced some kind of terrorist attack against their legitimacy, against their own sovereignty. And so it is important for them to speak out, especially when we have seen strong statements from Pakistan. And I think Pakistan would like to see other Arab and Islamic countries speak out and act in as strong a way as Pakistan has. And, Uzbekistan has been rather forthcoming, and others have been rather forthcoming. And I think as the days go by and as the various plans come together, you'll see more and more of them speaking out. The UAE has said it is reviewing its relationship with Taliban activities within the UAE, and we'll see where that leads. The Sudan has become suddenly much more interested and active in working with us on various items. So there are a lot of things that are going on that will become more manifest as time goes on. Let me go in the back, all in the back.
Mr. Secretary, did you get the chance to talk to the Greek Foreign Minister?
Yes, I did.
For this crisis?
I did. I talked to my colleague George Papandreou over the weekend. I can get the specific date for you. Richard has a rather imposing list of phone calls, but I can no longer remember which day. It was over the weekend, both to my Greek and to my Turkish colleagues on the same day.
Is turning over Osama bin Laden enough? Are there other things the Taliban will also
We are
have to do?
after the al-Qaeda network. It's not one individual, it's lots of individuals, and it's lots of cells. As I said on television yesterday, Osama bin Laden is the chairman of a holding company, and within that holding company are terrorist cells and organizations in dozens of countries around the world, any one of them capable of committing a terrorist act. So it is not enough to get one individual, although we'll start with that one individual. It will not be over until we have gotten into the inside of this organization, inside its decision cycle, inside its planning cycle, inside its execution capability, and until we have neutralized and destroyed it. That is our objective. Yeah.
The Taliban today is apparently offering that a court of Islamic clerics would determine the fate of bin Laden, and that they would accept that outcome. But this is something they've offered before, and the U.S. rejected it before. I want to know if that's still your feeling, if that is any kind of flexibility. And also, is there an interagency team planning to go into Pakistan anytime soon?
On the first point, I'll wait and see what they end up doing and what that court decides once it is convened in whatever fashion it convenes itself and what action it takes. I don't want to prejudge what we might do in response to what it might do. With respect to an interagency team going to Pakistan, we are making a determination now, and it'll take a day or two or a couple of days as to what we might want to ask the Pakistanis for, and when that has been determined, then we will form a team appropriate to that task. Yes, sorry. Yeah.
Are you certain that Osama bin Laden is still in Afghanistan, and are you confident that the Taliban could actually find him?
I can't be certain of where he is. I'm reasonably confident and certain that if the Taliban government wanted to find him, they would know where he is if he is still in Afghanistan, and I have seen nothing to indicate he is not still in Afghanistan. Yes, sir.
Mr. Secretary, how do you plan to follow up on the positive signals being sent from Iran?
From Iran?
Yes.
As I said yesterday, these are positive signals, and I've had it reinforced that it is a positive signal, and it's worth exploring. And that's where I would leave it right now, not move it any further than that, worth exploring. Remember now, as you surely do, that Iran is a nation we have designated as sponsoring state terrorism. And they may want to make cause against the Taliban, but will they make cause against other terrorist organizations that they have provided support to? And I'm willing to explore that. But let's not get any further than that. I'm not, some suggested that they're part of the coalition, they're going to be partners. Not so fast. We recognize the nature of that regime. They have said something that is different than what we have heard from them previously. They too are shocked by what happened, they tell us, and so it seems to me that is an opening worth exploring, and that's as far as we go right now. I'm running out of time. Yes, sir.
Who has not responded well? What countries have disappointed you in their response? And secondly, last week, Deputy Defense Secretary Wolfowitz used the phrase ending regimes that sponsor terrorism. No administration official has repeated that formula. Are we really after ending regimes, or are we simply going to try to change their behavior?
We're after ending terrorism. And if there are states and regimes, nations that support terrorism, we hope to persuade them that it is in their interest to stop doing that. But I think ending terrorism is where I would like to leave it, and let Mr. Wolfowitz speak for himself.
Anybody
Yeah.
has what countries have fallen short, let's say?
I really don't have a list of fall shorts. Some have been able to do more than others. Some, it is rhetorical in nature, and they really don't have much else to give us other than words of support and encouragement. Others, it is far more than that, to the point of, if you have to do something militarily, ask us if we can participate. So it is a full range. But within the capabilities that they have, I am satisfied, very satisfied, with most of the responses that I've received. Where there is an opportunity for a country to do more and they haven't yet offered to do more, I'd rather deal with them rather than single them out. One more, then I got to go. Okay, Barbara, sorry.
Secretary, NATO said they would be with us, but apparently Italy, there was a statement this morning that Italy would not participate militarily in any sort of action. And there have been some countries in the Middle East and elsewhere that have expressed concern that this is going to be too broad a campaign, and they want it to be very narrowly focused, and they're nervous. What would you say to them?
Sensitive to all those concerns. I heard something quite different from Italy, but my Italian colleague will be here this week, so Renato and I can talk directly, and we.
Following that's on the Middle East.
Hold on. Pushy.
I'm in New York.
I forgot the question. Next.
The question was.
Jane, pick it up.
No. On the Taliban. You just said a little earlier that there will be communication, but you would prefer not to characterize it. Yet yesterday, I think you said that in a couple of days, the United States would be talking to the Taliban. Are you suggesting here that the first communication will be military rather than anything else?
No.
So
I think both statements are consistent.
So
communication, contact.
When will the United States be talking to the Taliban? Will we be sending someone in from Islamabad?
That's what I also said today, that I'm not prepared to comment on The modalities or when or under what set of circumstances, what the nature of the communications will be, because that's still being resolved. Okay, Barbara, do you remember what the question is? I'll try to remember the answer.
The second part of the question, forgive me as an ex-New Yorker, was about Israel. Ariel Sharon has not been terribly helpful, it seems, in this. A lot of Arab countries are saying we have to do something about this conflict, and we have to restrain Sharon, or a coalition isn't going to fly.
I think we do have to do something about the situation in the Middle East. I carve out part of my day to press and work on that. Prime Minister Sharon and I had a very long phone conversation last night, and we talked about his latest approach of his son and an official from the ministry visiting with Chairman Arafat and talking about how this series of meetings could get started. And I never lose sight of the fact that one of the underlying continuing problems we will have, we had it before 11 September, we're going to have it for the foreseeable future, is that we have to get into the Mitchell plan and we have to get back to negotiations in due course. And so I can assure you I haven't taken the United States' eye off that ball. I do have to go. Thank you. I really felt something. I really got to go. Sorry.
Secretary of State Colin Powell, with a rather extended briefing. Among other things, he said that Yemen, which over the years has been kind of on the seesaw about terrorism, had offered their help, and that the president of Syria, he said, happened to be visiting in Yemen, indicating that there might be some continuing conversations about that. As you know, Syria is officially carried by the State Department as a terrorist state, is considered. Syria, Libya, Iran, Iraq, Sudan, and Afghanistan have long been considered the most serious states that at least harbor terrorism. Let's go quickly to David Martin at the Pentagon. David?
Dan, Secretary Powell seemed to make it fairly clear that whatever the Taliban said to the Pakistanis in response to the ultimatum to turn over Osama bin Laden or else was not going to be satisfactory. And he made it clear that the U.S. is going to be delivering, he didn't call it an ultimatum, but I think that's what it will be, to the Taliban directly at some point in this process, demanding again that they turn over Osama bin Laden or else. And it's also clear that turning over Osama bin Laden is not enough, because he is simply the head of a much larger organization, and they're going after all the members of that organization.
David, on the point of, well, how do we know that Osama bin Laden is in Afghanistan, and the Secretary of State basically saying, well, we don't know where he is, one has in mind that at least until recently, and perhaps even continuing, the borders with Pakistan and Iran are fairly porous borders, and Osama bin Laden could disguise himself as a refugee and easily cross any of those borders.
Well, I think that's true, which is why you can never count on getting the person, but they can't move the caves where his hideouts are, and they can't move all of the equipment that's in those caves without it being seen by satellites. So it may well be that they've lost track of Osama bin Laden, and he may not be in the country, but they can still demand of the Taliban that they shut down his operation in Afghanistan.
David Martin at the Pentagon. We continue watching the stock markets closely. At the bottom of your screen, you see what's been happening. The Dow down about, almost 650 points at the moment. The NASDAQ also down. It's been sort of up and down, but mostly down in a range of 400 to 600 on the Dow.